and the least, the most.
The Farrakhan generation. The Farrakhan generation.
Why's it? Closing the gap. As long as we moving together, then nothing is holding us back. I cannot factor in none of your feelings. We dealing in actual facts. Just know our numbers exact. Keep it 1,000. If you see the universe dishing his crown, you won't see a cap. Told you closing the gap. They covered the truth, he opened the lid. I'm going over, they flow like a bridge. You tell a tree by its fruit like a fig. Went from auction blocks to doing the bid. We were chosen so they like it and big. The well is the darkest, as cold as it gets. Truth is the light, and our path will be lit by the love of the leader. No doubts in this wig. Cured our illness, I know that they sick. Ooh.
Closing the Gap Broadcast Network, the Farrakhan generation.
Assalamu alaikum. We will begin shortly. Thank you, Sister Alicia. It was a pleasure. I'm happy that you came on. Thank you for leaving the comment. Praise be to Allah. That's our Christian family, bringing Christian Muslim unity. That's wonderful. Wa alaikum salam, NOI Arts. Praise be to Allah. Wa alaikum salam, Brother Kenneth, all the way up in Nova Scotia. Praise be to Allah in Canada. Sister Sophia, all praises due to Allah. Wa alaikum salam. Sister
Wow.
I was just greeting.
Something happened. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, the All-Wise, true and living God, who came to us in the person of Master Wallace Fard Muhammad, we thank him for coming out of the east unto the west and raising that one from amongst us, the one whom we know, whom is indeed the exalted living Christ. That man that I am speaking of is the most honorable Elijah Muhammad. We thank both the Mahdi, that self-guided one, the Christ, the crusher of the wicked, for raising up another man, that third man, and extending into him their mind, mission, will, love, and favor. That man that I am speaking of is the Messiah in our midst, the most honorable minister, Louis Eugene Farrakhan. And in their holy and righteous names, we greet you from all over the country and even all over the world with the greeting words of peace and of paradise of Assalamu alaikum. I am your brother and forever servant, Brother Michael Jamal Hassan Muhammad, and thank you for tuning in to this week's special broadcast on the one and only Closing the Gap Broadcast Network, the Farrakhan generation. At this time, I would generally give way to our dear sister, Sister Maryam, Alima, Warith, Muhammad, but the rest of our Closing the Gap team and her as well, along with Brother Romel. They're in a meeting right now, a network meeting, in discussing some things that has affected our viewership on the YouTube channel. And as you can see, there was a little bit of a rejection just now, where I got booted out of the platform just a moment ago. But thank you to our student coordinator, Brother Roger A. Muhammad. He was ready to cover down, but we meet and overcome all obstacles in our path, both the brothers in our nation and the sisters. So that training was put into place, so we will continue to move forward just as scheduled. So now that that was said, let's give way to our brother. As you can see him, Brother Roger A. Muhammad. But before we do that, I want to quickly read a short bio on this beautiful brother that we have here in front of us. And I have that bio here. Just give me one quick second. And here it is. Our dear brother Roger A. Muhammad is the student coordinator of the Muhammad Study Group of Montreal, Canada. Way out of Canada. As you may know, they was giving us some smoke. So Brother Roger's about to give us some smoke today. He has been a student of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and a part of the Nation of Islam since 1996. Before joining the Nation of Islam, he had the opportunity as a young Muslim to study and receive training in Islamic sciences by scholars from the University of Islamabad. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah. Through a program sponsored by ISNA in Indianapolis professionally, he works in the field of artificial intelligence, AI, and earned a master's degree in information technology. Some of his algorithms have been published, wow, in peer-reviewed scientific journals. He is also the author of the book, Who is the Original Man? A Molecular Anthropology of Pre-Adamic Civilization. Wow. Prefaced by Dr. Ridgely A. Muhammad, and the upcoming book, Equations of Self, Learning to Overcome the Dynamics of Ego, prefaced by student research minister Dimitri Muhammad. Allahu Akbar. Now, there's another part I just want to pull in, because I'm still very, I lack knowledge in this particular information that's about to be offered by our dear brothers. So just like you, maybe like myself, you want to know what this is about. So I'm going to read this description as he sent it to me, so that you have clear understanding from him of what this is about. This description of today's presentation: in the wake of documentary of Queen Cleopatra, now streaming on Netflix, there has been a strong resurgence on social media, as he says, and as it is, and the mainstream media, of the debate surrounding the ethnic origins of ancient Egyptians. Wow. Many modern Egyptians have vehemently opposed the portrayal of the ancient Egyptian pyramid builders as a Black civilization. Moreover, in an attempt to undo the pioneering work of scholars such as Dr. Cheikh Anta Diop, I hope I said that correctly, and Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, and many others who showed strong archaeological historical evidence of a Black origin for ancient Egypt's proponents. Wow, that's a beautiful word. Of the non-Black origin for ancient Egypt, genetics and molecular anthropology to support their claims. In this presentation, Brother Roger A. Muhammad will address this controversy, which with special emphasis on the genetic arguments that some claim refutes the Black origin of ancient Egypt. As a student of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the Most Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he will present scientific evidence to demonstrate that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was 100, 1,000, 1,000,000% right when saying that if you want to see a sign of when the black man and woman was God on the planet, go to Egypt. And now we will give way to this beautiful student coordinator out of Montreal, Canada, Brother Roger A. Muhammad. To the people, please tell us everything about yourself, dear brother.
Yes, sir. Wa alaikum salam, dear brother Michael. First of all, thank you so much.
Yes.
In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and Merciful. Thank you so much to, well, especially, I would say you in particular, in the way you've been so accommodating and you've been so smooth and just making sure that this broadcast comes together. And I know that you just suffered a loss of your uncle. And in spite of that, while we extend to you our condolences, in spite of that trial, you continued on with the work, showing yourself to be a true soldier of Muhammad in the cause, brother. And so I thank you, brother Michael.
All praises due to Allah.
Praises due to Allah. And once again, I extend condolences to you and to your beloved family.
Thank you so much.
And of course, we want to thank student minister James Muhammad.
Yes,
James, I'm so honored. Like, he is the one who first gave me, that I first communicated with, and he put me in contact with you in that same spirit.
Yes,
loving spirit.
Yes, he is.
That is so beautiful. And Closing the Gap broadcast network, I see it as really the media of the future.
Yes.
And really a sign of what content will be like as we come over the end of the world of Satan, if you will.
Teach.
And so I'm very honored to be able to, in any small way, contribute in this great effort, which seeks to lift up the truth and the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and to do so in love and in unity of all our people, because we have some of our Christian brothers and sisters. I give a shout out to my sister Alicia in Montreal, who is from Union United Church. My brother, Pastor Moshe Guerrier, also in Montreal, a Christian pastor, always supporting the Muhammad Study Group and the Nation of Islam, and letting nothing divide us over labels. And naturally, when we come to a subject like this one, really it affects all of us as Black people, whether we're Christian, Muslim, we call ourselves Black nationalists, even atheists. When someone is trying to deny your birthright,
come on,
that is a universal call for us to come together and close ranks as a solid wall and respond.
Yes. Praise be to Allah. Thank you very much, dear brother Roger. Now, this is going to be a very interesting and different styled interview and broadcast for us on Tuesday. So bear with us, be with us, but we're going to engage in the interview style in the beginning, and then allow our brother to kind of answer some of those questions, whether it be from the audience or from myself. And then from there, we're going to go right into giving way to him presenting to us such a case that will further confirm the uncovering that our Messiah, your Messiah, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, has been doing for such a long time. And also before him, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has done as well. This brother will do something today, present something today that will confirm what they have already taught us. So today, dear brother, I have a question for you. And many who watch this show know that I love names. I love words. I love the meaning of them, because the first God that we all knew before we knew of God was Mother. So when Mother gave us the name, it's not so much that we should run from the name Mom gave us to run to another name. Sometimes we need to see, what was it in her? What was it? What was the spirit? What was Allah trying to signal through the name she chose that we wear, until maybe finding another assignment, another name. But the name Raja, it's not a bad name. It's a beautiful name. It means a spearman, a warrior, a soldier that is a spearman. What is a spearman? What is a spear? A spear is a weapon, a long weapon with a sharp, pointy tip that is used by warriors as a defense of something that they love, or as a weapon of war. So our brother has a spear, and his spear is the presentation that he is bringing to us today. So to the people is our brother Roger, the spearman. So dear brother Roger, in this presentation, what can we expect to receive from you in as a case based on these controversies wrapped around Queen Cleopatra and the blackness, the origin of Egypt?
Yes, sir, my brother. Well, the whole notion of the ancient Egyptians being black, if you will, is a topic that, if we go back, a couple of decades into the 90s,
Yes.
back when Satan had not gotten a full grip on hip hop culture,
Yes.
we know that there were some more conscious hip hop artists at the time, many of them influenced by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, and also an entire movement of Black consciousness that was taking place through the scholarship of many great ones.
Yes.
that you mentioned in the introduction, like Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, Ivan Van Sertima, Ben Yakinen, and so forth. And even before that, in the days, of the civil rights movement,
Yes.
we had emerging scholarship that essentially sought to affirm, reestablish, restore the history that was taken from us through the journey of slavery.
Yes, sir.
And upon restoring that history, they came to realize that one of the key jewels of that heritage is and was the civilization of the Nile Valley, more specifically ancient Egypt and ancient Nubia. Now, as we begin to see the rise of Black consciousness, especially,
Yes.
I would say, in North America, and it extended over to Europe and Africa, but the strong Black consciousness that was present,
Yes, sir.
from the 60s all the way to the 90s has made it so that, if you will, we have gotten, we kind of took for granted.
Yes.
And nowadays, and we even had Michael Jackson with the video. Do you remember?
Yes. Remember the time.
How young you are. Yeah, I don't care how young you are. If you Black, you got to know that song.
You got to know that song.
Otherwise, you got to go on the side, open the tab, go to Google, go on YouTube or Spotify, and listen to,
yes, sir.
or watch the video. More importantly, remember the time where Michael Jackson featured Eddie Murphy, the comedian, as Ramesses, and you had the actress Imani as Queen Nefertiti. Yes. And back then, it caused a lot of stir, and it caused Michael Jackson to get a lot of heat.
Yes.
Nonetheless, it became somewhat of an accepted fact in the Black community. So if you look at the evolution of Black scholarship moving into the late 90s and the 2000s, we saw that there was less and less of a focus on trying to establish ancient Egypt as Black. We sort of just took it for granted. And rightfully so, we began to expand on different dimensions of that heritage. So you had a lot of our Kemet brothers and sisters, for example, who went deep into, some of the spiritual aspects, for example. But what we did not realize, and as we will show in the presentation, our pioneer Black scholars foretold us this was going to happen. But what was happening in the background was that Satan was not going to just give up that easily.
Come on.
There was a book called Black Athena by a Caucasian, a white scholar, and who essentially also embraced much of what was done by our Black scholars. And when he put out the book, there was a response by many of the scholars of the establishment to try to refute it. And so while this kind of went away, and for us, we kind of felt like we won this debate, that's it, game over.
Wow.
They did not go out like that. In the background, they have been pursuing other avenues in the fields of population genetics, molecular anthropology, advanced DNA analysis. They have been essentially digging into those advanced sciences and slowly creeping back up to make the case to come back now and be able to use new scientific language that in truth many of us are not familiar with, because really some of the language used is familiar to someone who may have a bachelor's degree in biology or genetics, or someone interested in that field. But what they did was they're using a very sophisticated scientific language and technology. And now these studies have been coming out to refute our Black scholars of the 60s up to the 90s. And with the release of the documentary, Cleopatra, that was like the spark, that was the fuse that set, the internet on fire, where now all of this content has been coming out. And what you're seeing is not even necessarily primarily Caucasians, because many Caucasians are now beginning to acknowledge the Black ancestry of ancient Egypt through essentially the research done by our great scholars. But unfortunately, and we who are Muslim followers of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, we love our brothers and sisters in the Muslim world. Having said that, as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan has said, they too have been poisoned by the sickness of white supremacy that causes them to want to glorify that which is closer to white and to denigrate that which is closer to Black. So the first ones to actually oppose and to now want to use these genetic studies to try to put forward what they call the debunking of the Black ancient Egyptian origin. Well, that documentary that our sister Jada Pinkett Smith executive produced on Netflix has set essentially a firestorm, that is now reigniting the debate. But unfortunately, because we kind of skipped the generation when it comes to the study, we now have to equip ourselves to make sure that we are able to respond in a scientific manner to the so-called debunking of Black ancient Egypt based on genetics.
Yes, sir. Allahu Akbar. Thank you so much, dear brother, for that. That was powerful, and it made me think of something as you were digging into the fire that has been produced by such, this is acting, right? Acting is supposed to have the freedom to act in a role that is I'll say it like this. Let's put it this way. Interestingly enough, we as Black people in America are used to movies portraying those whom may have been of the blacker color, the darker color. And there was never a fire set for the Moses movies.
That's right, brother.
There was not a fire set for Passion of the Christ, right?
Come on now.
These movies had a Caucasian covering on individuals who were of darker complexion. But these fires was not produced for those movies. The first time, and this is not even a prophet of God, this is a queen of a society at a certain time and certain era when Rome was going through some things, and if I'm correct, right? So
yes, sir.
Why is it that, my question is, why is it that a fire would be produced because a sister who is light in complexion is playing the role of a queen out of Egypt when there has been thousands of movies that has portrayed us or portrayed certain powerful individuals absolutely inaccurate?
Well, brother,
what is it about Queen Cleopatra?
Well, brother Michael, the thing is, and we will get to Cleopatra specifically, because there's something about that debate that those who would oppose the Black origin of ancient Egypt will take advantage of in the history of Cleopatra, which we will cover. But what really enrages many in this debate is see why this debate is so critical to so many, especially those at higher levels in the society.
Yes, sir.
Higher rankings of Satan are
sir.
very interested in this debate is because of what ancient Egypt represents. You see, if you look at the pyramids, pyramid structures, to this day, with the finest technology, with the finest engineers, the finest scientists, the finest architects, the best minds of this world who are able to send the James Webb satellite out into space and are able to actually look at black holes, which was not possible just 10 years ago. With all of that advanced technology, to this very day, none of them are capable of reproducing one of the great pyramids of Giza.
Ooh, boy.
What does that tell you?
Come on.
That tells you, okay, there is a civilization that predated us. I'm talking about the Western civilization as they look at this. Here's a civilization that predated us and that possessed a technology that we do not understand, that essentially ignited high civilization, mathematics, medicine, writing, and all of the advanced sciences. And by the way, if you look, for example, at the mathematical system of the inch, the measurement of the inch, it is measured on the pyramid inch. The pyramid is the standard for measuring the inch.
Yes, sir.
Which, and I won't get into that, but which implies that they had an intimate knowledge of the true value of pi in mathematics.
Yes.
We won't get into that. But the point really we're trying to make is that this high civilization is the prize of ancient civilizations as far as the Western world is seeing it, and that includes the Middle Eastern world. And so if you now acknowledge that those structures, the pyramids, and we could spend a whole broadcast talking about them, if those structures were built by a black people whom we have enslaved, whom we now have kept in a state where we want the darker to be inferior and the light and white to be superior. What is that? That is the system of white supremacy. The very paradigm of white supremacy rests on the notion that we, the so-called Negroes, are incapable of high civilization. From the moment that you break up that mythos, it actually, by definition, tears down the very paradigm of white supremacy. And so to disprove that black people were able to build these high civilizations really unconsciously and consciously is an attempt to protect the institution of white supremacy itself, which is threatened by this truth.
Come on. Ooh. Allahu Akbar. Oh, we are digging into it. The spearman is at work. Praise be to Allah. You know, brother, I see a sign in this controversy. You know, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us and teaches us through the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that our unity as black men and women is more powerful than the energy in an atomic bomb. Our unity is more powerful than an atomic bomb. So all the science and all the energy that is put into this system to create an explosion that is feared across all parts of the world is not as powerful as us coming together, as we have seen in some recent clip with the brawl, right?
Yeah,
Unity, 16-year-olds swimming across. They thought black folks couldn't swim.
Come on,
He swam across to defend one of his own because he was being ganged up by another type of people. And he saw something. He said it was a saying that was being said, I guess, in that brawl. This ain't the 1950s, right? I see something like that on social media. But I see a sign. If there's a controversy around this, just the color of Queen Cleopatra and the origins of Egypt, this is not black people who are causing such a fire because we lack knowledge. This is the people who understand, and they're causing a fire, or those who are from that race and don't understand. And still they're coming into unity and causing a controversy. We should do the same. So I wanted to ask you, brother, is there a sign in this that is really a blessing of what we should be doing, how we should come together when things like this is being portrayed about one of our own improperly?
Brother, your analogy is so impeccably relevant to the topic.
Yes.
That is right and exact. In that when you had the release of the documentary on Cleopatra, you saw the coming together of those forces that align. However, and this is something that I noticed as well, with the exception of some great brothers on YouTube who have been great defenders, and I want to shout them out, Mr. Imhotep and Brother Kweli Mika and the King's Monologue. These brothers have been doing great work on YouTube to be defenders of our heritage.
Yes,
but what I've noticed was that not many of our Black scholars actually stood up. Not many in the community stood up simply because, again, we skipped the generation, and that's what happens when we go to sleep. When the sheep go to sleep, the wolves come out.
Come on. Yes.
So now, hopefully, and that's why I'm so happy to be doing this with you, Brother Michael, and, you know, bringing this to the younger generation. I think we need to essentially make sure that our youth are aware, because as you'll see, a lot of the ones, for example, are Arab, Egyptian, light-skinned brothers and sisters. The ones that are coming on TikTok and YouTube, they're the young people.
Come on.
That's essentially taking the information they receive from those who feed them the lies, those scholars and archaeologists, but then they're the ones propagating it. And Brother Michael, these TikTok videos and YouTube videos, if you look it up, they're getting millions of views.
Yes.
But now where is our response?
Come on.
Now we need to gang up in an intellectual way and start swinging intellectually and show the power of our unity. And each swing is not a physical fist, but it is to swing with the truth and action.
Yes. Come on. Allahu Akbar. Yes.
So just like right. If you want to swing hard and be strong physically, you got to work out.
Yes.
Well, you got to study.
Yes, sir.
Your legacy.
That's right. Allahu Akbar. Well, I'll tell you and the people this. We have one right here that we're speaking with today who is speaking up. And let this be a charge, a good charge for all of those others who have the science of understanding in their minds about certain things like this. This brother, I don't know if you all know, this is a serious topic. And he desired this without anyone asking of it of himself. It came from his own desire. So we have one, and his name is Brother Raja A. Muhammad, and we can feel very proud as the Nation of Islam to have brothers and sisters like this that would be a defense where others are too afraid to defend. So I thank you, Brother Roger, for this because I've been hearing about this controversy, and you know, I'm not an anthropologist. So I used to want to be an anthropologist when I was younger. I wanted to be anything that had an IST at the end. I wanted to be that because I knew you was in the study of something. So I wanted to be an anthropologist. I wanted to be an archaeologist. I wanted to be all these and come to find out, we as a people, we have all of that in us already. It depends on it's just up to us to decide which one we want to focus on, right? Well, our brother Roger has decided to focus on, and not just focus on it. He has the mastery behind him to back up what he says out of his mouth and light. I'll say this one last thing. I love bringing this up. We were taught and are taught in our nation by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that any time you see something of something in the universe spinning, something in the universe moving, something in our universe in motion, there is something of a greater light causing that thing to move, to spin. So our brother is in motion on this topic. Is because there is a greater light that you may not see, But if you look at the brother, you will see him. If you listen to the brother, you will hear the light that is greater, causing our brother Roger A. Muhammad to spin. So let's all get on the motion, because this is a topic that will not stop. I'm telling you, this right here is going to be a beginning to something very serious, and we must be ready to be a spearman like our brother Roger. Thank you so much, dear brother Roger.
Michael, all praises to Allah.
Yes, sir. Praise be to Allah.
So, with that beautiful and humbling introduction, as a little student myself, trying to help the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan and our nation,
yes,
and to do this work as you are doing this work so magnificently with closing the gap. Inshallah, let us present to our brothers and sisters who may not necessarily feel, as you said, Brother Michael, equipped to engage in this debate, which is maybe the reason why we have not engaged as strongly and why we see so many millions of views on the opposite side, but not as many from our side. So hopefully, by the grace of Allah, we hope that this research can try to be a starting point in the conversation, because there's so much more that we could expose, but hopefully this will be a beginning. So inshallah, I will.
Dear brother, what we're going to do is,
yes, sir,
let's take a quick break, right? We're going to have a nice little commercial come in. It's like a minute long. And then that will allow everyone to get themselves into position, because I want them to be totally ready, and you to be totally ready, and myself, for all of this beautiful information. So we could take a quick break. On the other side of those breaks, this break, is all Brother Roger. Is that okay, Brother Roger?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Praise be to Allah. Well, dear family, continue to post your comments. Sister Kingsley, we see you. We thank you for your comments. And all of the other audience members that are here with us today, we thank you for your presence. Share this broadcast, because we're about to get right into it. Share it far and wide. Make everyone know that this is about to happen. And don't be afraid to share. Right. And on the other side of the break, if you have questions, lift them up, because at the end of our brother's presentation, what we're going to do is leave a little bit of time for the audience to be able to ask whatever questions that you may have to our brother Roger A. Muhammad. So on the other side of the commercials, I think my brother Romel, our beautiful tech and director, is here. So take us to commercials, Brother Romel. Oh, did he take us to the commercial? Not yet. Let's do it.
That's all right.
There is a need in our community for a universal change. And it has to start with the man. Being a man of God means being a man possessed of the knowledge, the spirit, and the power of God, anointed to do his will. To build a people, you first must make man. what is race. Every man, in order to be a man, must be a man of God, or he's not a man at all. Let us make man.
Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. We have our dear brother Roger A. Muhammad here with us today, and he is going to get us ready for his presentation. And I'm going to phase out so that all of the light is on our brother and his presentation. And again, I say to all of the audience, please, as Sister Maryam would say if she was here, she would say, I implore you to post your comments and your questions for our brother, because this is an important topic that we must not hold questions and comments to ourselves, because when you have someone in front of you that has a mastery in something, then that means he is deserving to be asked a question because he has potentially an answer. So at this time, Brother Roger, you have the floor, and I think you know exactly what to do. It's all yours, dear brother.
Thank you so much, my dear brother Michael Muhammad. So first of all, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, I bear witness that there is no God but Allah, who came to us in the person of Master Father Muhammad. And I bear witness that the most honorable Elijah Muhammad is the Mahdi, and that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is that messianic figure in our midst today. And in their names, I greet you, the audience of this great broadcast of Closing the Gap. Assalamu alaikum. And so to our Christian family, we say peace be unto you. And to our Kemet family, we say hetepu. And so we want to essentially address the controversy around the Cleopatra documentary, which presents not only Queen Cleopatra, but the cast as black, and ask the question, ancient Egypt, black or white? And first of all, I want to quote, as we have earlier, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad as the foundation for what it is that we are going to present today. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that if you want a sign of when the black man and woman was God on the planet, go to Egypt. And as we mentioned earlier, the reason why he said go to Egypt is because when you look at the wonders of ancient Egypt, you look at the pyramid structures, you look at the Sphinx, which shows this prominent, powerful face of this black man, this royal black man. And when you look at the great temples, the medicine, the mathematics that was raised by this civilization, it is a sign of the great potential in the original man and woman. And we who have been taken into slavery, and we whose names have been taken away from us, our language, our heritage, our history, our God, we have been made to think that we have no value. And so those words of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad are a foundation for us, because that is the premise that we will use to defend our position. And alongside the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we've had great scholars, as we've mentioned them, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, Dr. Yusuf Ben Yakinen, the great J.A. Rogers, who was a great inspiration to our great late Minister Jabril Muhammad. All have made decades of research and efforts to uncover the great heritage of the original Black men and women, to restore our pride in our history and our value as human beings, because one who does not know where he is from does not know where he is going. But now, in spite of all of this great research that was done by many of our great scholars, for decades, we have seen how Hollywood has whitewashed ancient Egypt, has systematically refused to represent ancient Egypt as a Black civilization. If you just look at 1963's movie on Queen Elizabeth, a Caucasian American actress, and when that movie came out, we didn't hear no Egyptian government talking about, we're going to sue you because you used a European woman. And the only Black people that we saw in that movie were the slaves, to try to remind us that the only place that we have in high civilization is the place of a slave. And for thousands of years, it has always been so, to imprint in our minds that we as a people can achieve nothing more than savagery or slavery. And all the way up to 2016 with the Gods of Egypt, portraying an all white cast. This refusal of acknowledging the facts has been unrelenting. And what best captures the mindset behind this rejection are the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan during the Million Man March, when he said, quote, "White supremacy caused you all, not you all, some white folk, to try to rewrite history and write us out. White supremacy caused Napoleon to blow the nose off of the Sphinx because it reminded you too much of the Black man's majesty." And this is the center of the problem. So now, when our sister Jada Pinkett Smith executive produced this documentary showing not only the Queen Cleopatra as a Black woman, really a light-skinned Black woman, by the way, but showing the whole cast of actors who were playing the roles of ancient Egyptians using an all-Black cast as ancient Egyptians, we have to understand that this is something that has never been done on mainstream media in the history of our struggle. So we actually need to take a moment to recognize the work of Jada Pinkett Smith, our sister, for having the courage to produce this docuseries. But unfortunately, when mainstream acceptance of such a powerful truth is put forward to the people, it causes anger and it causes controversy. And there has been such a backlash over this series, and surprisingly not all that much coming from Caucasians, but coming from our brothers and sisters in what is today called the Arab Republic of Egypt, our light-skinned brothers and sisters in that country who were so upset that what they claim to be their civilization would be associated with us so-called Negroes, that the Egyptian government essentially had a legal team to sue Netflix for $2 billion, accusing Netflix of falsifying the history of the Egyptian people by propagating quote unquote Afrocentric theories. And it's not really only the Cleopatra controversy that started this. A few months earlier, our good brother Kevin Hart was canceled by Egyptian media, by the Egyptian people who started a boycott of Kevin Hart, brother Kevin Hart. Why? Because brother Kevin Hart said he had the audacity to claim that his ancestors, he was proud of his ancestors who built the pyramids. This enraged many of our Egyptian light-skinned brothers and sisters. And just a few months ago, after the Cleopatra documentary, the Egyptian government actually banned the Dutch museum from all further excavations in Egypt, saying that, or accusing them of linking Beyonce and Rihanna, two very light-skinned sisters, by the way, accusing them of falsifying the history and associating these Black American artists with Queen Nefertiti and the legacy of ancient Egypt, and promoting, again, these so-called lies about a Black origin. And so now the Dutch archaeologists have literally been banned from Egypt by the government. And so this really has launched. In 2023, we've seen an intensification all over social media among those who partake in this anti-Black Kemet advocacy, where young people, from young Caucasians to young Egyptian Arabs, who would now post videos talking about there's a conspiracy. It's a woke conspiracy of the left. That's the language they use nowadays. That's how you debunk anything. You just say it's a woke conspiracy, and everybody starts, nobody wants no parts of that. But now there has been a movement with millions of views, essentially claiming to have debunked this idea. And really the chief detractor is the arch nemesis of Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop. And those of the younger generation who don't know who Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop is, we will explain what he did in a moment. But the former minister of antiquities of Egypt, Dr. Zahi Hawass, has been one of the most vocal challenges of the Black heritage of ancient Kemet, and his vehemence has intensified since the release of the Cleopatra documentary. And Dr. Hawass has boldly said, and I quote, he said, "You cannot connect the ancient Egyptian civilization with the African at all." Man. To think now that here's a man who knows that Egypt is sitting geographically right there in Africa, but who would say that the ancient Egyptian civilization has no connection to the African at all. But now, the claim behind that, and what has been really the standing narrative that has been spread all over social media, is essentially to say that, you know what, and I'm not trying to mock the accent of my Arab Egyptian brothers and sisters. Shoot, I look Arab for some people, so don't try to. But what they're saying is that, look, you see these pictures of these statues. They pull up these statues of very brown, olive skin, ancient Egyptian statues and paintings that they've selected. And then they'll pull up more modern ones from the Roman era. The ones you see on the right, you see some of what is called the Fayum mummies. And those are mummies from the more recent Roman era. And they will essentially say that, look, ancient Egyptians were never black. They were always this so-called olive skin, light skin, brown race that has been in isolation and separate from those so-called Negroes of the South. And so now the idea has been to promote this so-called Mediterranean, Middle Eastern origin of ancient Egypt. And what is interesting about the Cleopatra debate, and this is where we need to do a little bit of fact checking. You see, Cleopatra was what we call a Macedonian queen, who is from the Greek Ptolemaic dynasty, a dynasty that ruled from 305 BC to 30 BC, essentially that was founded when Alexander the Greek died and his empire began to break up into pieces. His general in Egypt, called Ptolemy, decided to now institute himself as a pharaoh and to essentially claim himself as the restorer of the pharaonic tradition. However, Ptolemy was a Greek, a Caucasian Greek. And so the main opposers of the documentary rightfully claim that, well, how can you claim that Cleopatra was a black woman when she clearly is a descendant of the Ptolemaic dynasty, which is not even Egyptian. It's not even native Egyptian. And that is true. And really what there is a debate among the scholars where the origin of Cleopatra is a hotly debated topic, because some scholars have evidence that while Cleopatra was clearly the descendant of a Greek dynasty, some scholars have put forward that since her father wanted to endear, and this is what the Ptolemaic dynasty has been doing, kind of like Biden in the Democratic Party, trying to endear themselves to black people, trying to say, we're one of you. How Bill Clinton was saying he was the first black president. No, don't let nobody tell you crap like that, brothers and sisters. See, they played the same game back then, where Ptolemy presented himself as an ancient Bill Clinton or an ancient Joe Biden, presenting himself as a friend of the ancient Egyptian culture. So in order to bring himself closer to Egyptian culture, some scholars have put forward that he may have fathered Cleopatra with a native Egyptian woman. And that would make Cleopatra at most what we in the nation call a half original sister. However, because the actual facts on this are still somewhat in a gray zone, and because the Ptolemaic dynasty did not represent itself as always, if you will, Greek looking, because if you look at these pictures, you see that when in Egypt, the statues have more of a black broad nose, more black African features. But if you look at a statue of Cleopatra as made by the Romans outside of Egypt, then clearly what you're seeing is a Caucasian-looking woman. So essentially, those who have been stirring the debate have been using the ambiguity around the origin of Cleopatra to create what is called a straw man argument, because it is easier to dismiss Cleopatra as not being black. And a straw man argument, as our dear beloved brother Jabril Muhammad, Minister Jabril Muhammad, wrote in Farrakhan the Traveler, may Allah be pleased with him, he gives us the definition of a straw man argument, which basically means to present someone who defends a position poorly as the defender, refute that person's arguments, and present that and pretend that every upholder of that position, and thus the position itself, has been defeated. And that is exactly how the Cleopatra debate is being depicted today, where they say, well, you see, we've debunked it because we can show you that Cleopatra was not black. And so if you're wrong about that, then you're also wrong about ancient Egyptians being black. And that's the straw man argument. However, there is a stronger and more serious argument that we're going to address today, and that is the genetic argument that many of those anti-black Kemet advocates have been putting forward in those Cleopatra is not black videos. And it's a study that's dated from 2017 by a group of scientists led by Schuneman and colleagues. And in that study, what they do essentially is they've taken 151 mummies, and really only 3 of them they were able to extract actual DNA data from. And when they analyzed the DNA using modern techniques, what they saw was that those ancient Egyptian mummies dated from the late New Kingdom around 1000 BC to around 30 BC, they found that they had a high percentage of a DNA marker that is associated, so they say, to a Mediterranean people, or what you would see today as a light-skinned people. And the other half, or most of the other half, came from more of a Mediterranean DNA stock that you find among the Saudi Arabians or the Turks or the Armenians, and that there was very little of the so-called Sub-Saharan genome ancestry found in those 3 mummies. So the clever thing about this paper, which was published in the most prestigious scientific paper in the world, which is Nature, which gave it a lot of credibility, is that, you know, and the minister is telling us to be careful with the language. We have to study the language, how the enemy manipulates it. But essentially, what they're saying in that study in very pretty and technical terms is they're telling us, black people, that not only were ancient Egyptians not black, but they were even less black, because when they compared the percentage of sub-Saharan African DNA present in those mummies with that of the modern Egyptians, they saw that the modern Egyptians had a higher percentage of that DNA. So they said, not only are ancient Egyptians not black, but they're even less black than the modern Egyptians, and the modern Egyptians are not even black. So how not black is that? So that's essentially what that study has been trying to put forward, using advanced genetic techniques to derive this data. And so obviously the mainstream media has completely run with this study. And so on CNN, on the Washington Post, on Fox, on MSNBC, everywhere you looked when that study came out, they were talking about, they had headlines like black or white, ancient Egyptian race mystery now solved. And it was presented to the world as though the whole question of whether or not ancient Egypt was black was finally scientifically and genetically resolved. But the thing is, our pioneer black scholars actually foretold us about all of this. In his book, Dr. Charles S. Finch, quoting from Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, said, quote, "It is in the and this was in the early 90s that he wrote this, way before these studies came out. So he said, it is in the multi-layered disciplines of anthropology, prehistory, and population genetics that some of the crucial lines of evidence are being pursued, half hidden from the view of the enlightened reading public, which seeks to minimize, undermine, and negate the African contribution to humanity." And that is exactly what the Schunemann study has attempted to do. But what we want to do tonight is take a closer look at this study and ask ourselves, are the conclusions of that study scientifically accurate? It sounds good. It sounds very sophisticated. But we will show you that, in fact, all of this is veiled, deceptive intelligence. So I will start with 3 reasons, and then we'll dig in a little bit deeper. So the first reason, well, the Schunemann study has a sample size of 3 mummies. 3 mummies. Anyone with a high school education in statistics will tell you that 3 observations is not a statistically significant sample size, and is absolutely useless in trying to draw any kind of conclusions about the ancient Egyptian population as a race over a 4,000-year span. So it's like I was to tell you, well, I know who's going to be the next president of the United States, because see, I ran a poll, and in the poll, I actually went to Florida. And all of the people that we polled, they said that they were going to vote for Trump. So I know that Trump is going to win. And all these people basically are out of Florida, so a state that is known to vote conservative. Would any serious mainstream news outlet publish a poll like that to infer that we predict that the voting intentions are going to Mr. Trump or Mr. Biden? Of course not. But what they did was they used a very highfalutin, sophisticated scientific language, and they essentially coded the whole fallacy around it. But at the end of the day, 3 mummies is an absolute farce. And many of the scholars in the field have actually refuted this. The second thing is that those conclusions in the Schunemann study are all drawn from a very narrow geography in ancient Egypt and a very narrow period. So now it's like it's like the example again with if you're going to take a poll about who will win the elections and you only select states that vote for Republicans. That poll would make no sense. So they've essentially done the equivalent of isolating the time period in the region where there would be more likely some genetic diversity due to foreign invaders coming into Egypt. But the third and the most important flaw is actually the assumption that the dominant DNA that was found in those mummies is not related to Black Africa. That is the biggest lie propagated in that study, and we're about to find out why. But first, let's just clear up, because we're using a lot of perhaps technical language, and please put it in the chat if I'm getting a little too technical. I promise my mentor student minister Arthur Muhammad from March number 7 when we spoke, you know, and he keeps telling me, brother, you got to dumb it down. Don't get too deep. So I'm working really hard, brothers and sisters, to try to make this as simple as possible. But sometimes with certain topics, we have to address the technicalities of it. But what is a genetic haplotype, which is what they used in the study? Well, essentially, this is a study that looks at the combinations of genes. And in biological anthropology and population genetics, a haplotype analysis is a way of verifying the genetic variation between and among members of a population. And what makes the haplotypes or haplogroups special is that it uses a Y chromosome, and that Y chromosome can only be inherited by a parent, meaning that it is not genetic information that you can pick up while you're living. That is new information that has to come down your genetic inheritance from your parents. So if you go to, for example, ancestry.com, you know, and they say, and you run the test, and they say, oh, well, you're 8% Irish, and you're 22% Cherokee, and you're 32% West African. Well, that's the same kind of technology. So it's really all that is. So they just essentially used sophisticated versions of that. And we have to understand there's a whole alphabet of what you call these haplogroups. And what they did in the study is when they analyzed the mummies, they said, well, look, the highest percentage of, and this is a heat map of these different haplogroups. And what they found was that a large percentage of those mummies carried what is called the E1B1B haplotype, which is found in the north of Africa, is found in the Mediterranean, in the Horn of Africa. And they also found what is called the J haplotype, which is mostly found today in Arabia, in Saudi Arabia, in Turkey, in Armenia, and Iraq, for example. And then what they said was, well, those were the prominent genes, but we found a very small percentage of what they call the E1B1A gene, which is the Sub-Saharan gene. And they say, well, as a result, since the E1B1B, or what they call the Meditid, which stands for Mediterranean, and the Arabid, which stands for Arabian, they say, well, they had Mediterranean and Middle Eastern, predominantly Middle Eastern and Mediterranean genes. And some articles, news articles, actually were saying that ancient Egyptians are closer to today's Armenians than they are to Black Africans. Can you imagine the deception? But now what they did not tell you, and now we're going to destruct this thing. Now we're going full, we're going full Decepticon. No, not Decepticon. We're going full Autobot mode for the geeks that are listening after the Decepticons. What they're not telling you in the study is that essentially the E1B1B type that is in North Africa is genetically connected to the E1B1A that they did not find much of. So in other words, they are both part of the E1B family, which is inherently an African haplotype and one of the oldest ones in the molecular record. And so when you look at the history of these two haplotypes, you find, and Schuneman and colleagues don't tell you this in their study, but you find that they have a direct common ancestor, an ancestor that is in the Great Lakes region near the Nile, around the Horn of Africa. And if you're a student of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, I want you to pay attention. Guess what? Not only do they have a common ancestor that is rooted in the Great Lakes region, but also the split between E1B1A and E1B1B occurred 50,000 years ago, according to the molecular record, which corresponds exactly to the time when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that the tribe of Shabazz split off to be its own group in the western part or southern part of the jungles of Africa. So this actually validates what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been teaching us since the 30s that they're now discovering in the 2000s. But more so, what we need to remember is that this E1B1B group that they associate with Mediterraneans, if you look at a modern population heat map of the E1B1B, what do you see? You see that the highest concentration, this is a heat map of the E1B1B that you're looking at. So you see all the purple. So the light is where there's less, and the dark is where there's the concentration. And where do you find the highest concentration of the E1B1 type on this map? You find it right in the Horn of Africa, where Black people exist. And so when Schuneman and colleagues are claiming that, well, this is a Mediterranean DNA, and so they could not possibly be Black, they are lying. And in fact, when we dig into the data, and I challenge anyone, the numbers that I'm showing here, you can go and read all the peer-reviewed scientific journals of molecular biology and population genetics, and you will find this data. As Dr. Wesley says, we have the receipts. If you want them, we have them. But essentially what you will notice is that many Black skin populations of Africa have large concentrations of this E1B1B, so-called metadid type, and the J Atabid haplogroups in their DNA. When you look at the Amhara people of Ethiopia, the Bija people of South Egypt, and the Nubians, they have a mix of this Atabid and metadid haplotypes. And when you look at the Tuareg of Mali, which is definitely in the Sub-Saharan African region, right? Tuaregs in Mali are definitely Black, are they not? Well, they have the highest, possibly the highest concentration in the world of this genetic marker of E1B1B, followed by the Somalis, who have the largest population concentration of this type. And so all we have to do is look at the pictures. I mean, this is the Bija tribe in South Egypt. They carry the exact same genetic markers as the ones found in the mummies of Schuneman and colleagues. The same genetic markers, the E1B1B and the J. Now, do these brothers look like olive light-skinned Mediterranean Greeks or Middle Eastern light-skinned Turks and Arabs and Armenians to you? Tell me in the chat, does it look like, do these people correspond with your idea of a light-skinned Mediterranean? That would look more like me. But these brothers unquestionably are Black. But this is the deceptive intelligence that is being used with highfalutin scientific language, that if you're not looking under the hood, you're not going to see the actual facts that are being hidden from the view of those of us who may not necessarily look at those details. But not only are the Bija tribe of South Egypt and North Sudan and really bleeding into Ethiopia, not only are they direct descendants of ancient Egyptians, they even kept the hairstyle, the braiding styles of the ancient Egyptian, as you can see in the ancient Egyptian walls. And so the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught us that you have the Shabazz type with the more kinky hair, and you have the Afro-Asiatic, as Dr. Wesley would call it, that may have more the silky hair, but all of them are Black. And even if you go to Haiti today, you'll see what they call the marabout. And they sometimes have more of the, like our student minister, Yusuf Makandal Muhammad, the Haitian representative, he's a little bit of that marabout style. He has that little kind of, wavy hair. But it's all black people. Some of us have different types. But what the enemy is trying to do is they're trying to divide us and try to create these segments among us. And the same goes with the original Arabs. Don't let nobody tell you that the modern light-skinned Arabs are what the Arabs always look like. Go read Dr. Wesley's book, Black Arabia, which clearly demonstrates how the J haplotype, the Arabids haplotype, is an original black genetic type. So let's fact check what we've got so far. So number one, the term Black Africa is absolutely not restricted to Sub-Saharan Africa, aka E1B1A, aka Tribe of Shabazz. Number two, the classification of E1B1B and J types as exclusively non-Black, as Schuneman and colleagues are trying to present it, is an absolute genetic falsehood. It's a falsehood that is now being propagated. And in fact, the term Sub-Saharan Africa was literally invented in the mid 40s, right when the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was gaining momentum, and it picked up steam. If you go look at Google Books Ngram Viewer to look at the origins of when words were first appearing in books, it's online. Everyone can use this. Just type Google Books Ngram. Don't take my word for it. But you'll find that the term Sub-Saharan Africa, as was pointed out by Dr. Rebecca Fudo Kennedy, who is a Caucasian scholar, by the way, of classics at Denison University, she pointed out that this term was essentially invented to try to circumscribe the definition of Black to only one type, so that you could isolate it as the so-called Negroid type and control the definition. And the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan told us in our studies, don't let anybody control the definition of words, especially the words that define you. You have to define yourself. And so really what this does, this Sub-Saharan African narrative around the E1B1A type, is a way for those who are anti-Black Kemet advocates to say, well, the only Black people that were in ancient Egypt were either Nubian captives, and then they will show you these steles, these wall paintings of our beautiful Bantu and Hutu brothers and sisters in the south of Nubia, with the beautiful thick lips and broad noses. They will show you those pictures that are different from the many of the Nubians and Egyptians who have more of the Tutsi phenotypes that are more with what we saw with the Bija tribe. And they'll try to make a distinction and say, well, these are the Negroes that were captives, but they were not Egyptians. And then they say, well, the only Black pharaohs that we're going to give you are the Nubian pharaohs of the 25th dynasty. This is essentially when the great pharaoh Taharqa in 664 BC, essentially, they say he conquered Egypt in 664 BC, but really we say that he took back Egypt and made it Black again because Egypt was being invaded by foreigners. And so he essentially reestablished the African tradition of ancient Egypt. But they will say these are the only Black pharaohs, no other Black pharaohs, and they're not really Egyptians. Don't try to say they're really Egyptians. That's not true. And that is a way to try to, again, lock the definition of Blackness. Because in Africa, Blackness is expressed through a wide range of facial features and phenotypes, as it is in Black America, as it is in Haiti, in Jamaica, in Brazil. We have many different phenotypes, but we're all Black. Some of us are a little bit more like some of us a little bit more dark, but we all call ourselves Black people. But really, they try to isolate us not only from our other Black brothers and sisters on the continent, but also, as the Honorable Elijah Muhammad taught, Black is universal. And Black is not just confined to the continent of Africa. In fact, if you look at the Andaman people of India as the beautiful brother and his child in the middle, they are the Aboriginal people of India, as the sister is with the sort of blonde hair. The hair is blonde, by the way, because of oxidation. It's not that she's blonde in the Caucasian sense of blonde in genetic terms, but what happens is when you expose the hair into the very hot sun, the hair's melanin is a little different from the skin melanin. It doesn't have the same resistance. And so when you expose it for a long period of time, it starts to create a process of oxidation, which is why the hair becomes blonde. And by the way, that's the reason why when you look at the mummy of Ramesses, and they show you this mummy, a very dark Black mummy, but they show you that Ramesses had blonde hair. And they say, well, look, you see, Ramesses was a white person. He had blonde hair. But what they don't understand is that, again, that's deception, because that's the oxidation. But now what you see here, and you see our original Arabian brother, all of these are Black people because Black is universal. And really all of this comes down to what our supreme wisdom lessons teach. When Master Farad Muhammad is asking the question to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, asking, why does the devil call our people Africans? And the answer is to make our people of North America believe that the people on that continent are the only people they have and are all savage. And that is exactly the narrative that we hear today, coming from Dr. Zahi Hawass and the anti-Black Kemet advocates who are following the same philosophy, the devilish philosophy of Sir William Flinders Petrie and Francis Galton, who promoted this idea of the anthropological Negro that was to promote the idea of the superior Caucasian and the what they call the tanned or brown Caucasian. Man, that's just sickness. But now, all of that being said, we've established that the E1B1B type and the J type are Black, that we have Black people in that region with that haplotype or those haplotypes. Check. But now I want to take us to the illustrious book from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Message to the Black Men in America, because now we have to ask a new question about that Schunemann study that claims that there is no E1, or there's very little E1B1A, aka Sub-Saharan, aka Shabazz blood in those mummies. Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says on page 31 in the chapter, Original Man, Know Thyself, quote, we, the tribe of Shabazz, says Allah God, were the first to discover the best part of our planet to live on, the rich Nile Valley of Egypt and the present seat of the holy city, Mecca, Arabia. So now you may say, well, Brother Roger, okay, you've shown us that, you know, that those Bija, E1B1B brothers and sisters, you know, they Black, but you know, maybe they just distant cousins, you know, maybe they right. Maybe Kevin Hart shouldn't say that ancient Egyptians, you know that we descend from ancient Egyptians because, you know, they weren't, they didn't have that E1B1A gene, you know, they weren't from the tribe of Shabazz. So are we trying to say that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was wrong, that he was incorrect? Well, I'm here to tell you emphatically no. And again, we have the receipts for it. Because Schunemann and colleagues' study has been rebutted in 2020 by Jean-Philippe Gourdin and colleagues' paper called Egypt Further Discussion, where they analyzed not 3, but the DNA of 9 mummies, including great pharaohs. And part of the data that they studied came from another study from 2012, published by none other than our very good, not friend, but our enemy in this way, because he's acting like an enemy, Dr. Zahi Hawass himself, who studied the remains or the mummy of Ramesses III and published a paper in 2012 about the results. And Jean-Philippe Gourdin and colleagues took that data and data of 9 in total mummies, and guess what they found? They found that all 9 mummies, and they found that in those mummies, Amenhotep III, Ramesses III, Tutankhamun, the most popular pharaoh in modern culture, all had 90% plus Sub-Saharan E1B1A haplogroups. In other words, they were straight Shabazz brothers. 93%, 94% Shabazz brothers. So no, you will not make the Honorable Elijah Muhammad a liar. And we have the actual facts to demonstrate it. And Dr. Schuneman and colleagues, we will have you noting that you have 3 mummies and we're presenting 9. So the data from the mummies in the Gourdin study outnumbers you 3-1. Just saying. And the 3 that you have, we've already demonstrated are Black people as well. So this is when you know, especially when we know that the study comes from Dr. Zahi Hawass, the same Dr. Hawass who said that ancient Egyptian civilization has no connection with the African at all. That means that we know he is lying, and he knows he's lying. Like the minister said at Savior's Day, you know, we know you're lying, and we know that you know that you're lying. And so that is the deceptive nature of the debate that we engaged in. But if we don't check under the hood, if we don't make the effort to go a little bit beyond and carry the legacy of all those great scholars who struggled for decades, we will allow this enemy to deceive and trick us into robbing us of our birthright. Not nowadays. And now in closing, we're almost there. There's one more thing. You see, the DNA studies are very interesting, but there's another study that is more powerful to determine the ethnicity or the race of ancient Egyptians, and it is called the Melanin test. And in 1978, after when Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, who was a physicist, by the way, he presented at the UNESCO symposium data to defend ancient Egypt as a Black African civilization. He took skin samples from mummies at the museum in Paris. And when he ran the test on the skin, he found that the melanin levels were very high. They corresponded to that of a very dark black-skinned person, even blacker than himself, who was a Senegalese brother, already dark. But then they said, well, that's just 1-2 mummies. That's not statistically significant, which, by the way, they're saying that to Dr. Diop. But when it's time for them to publish a study with 3 mummies, now all of a sudden they forget about statistics. Well, it turns out that in 2005, there was a study by Dr. Anna Maria Mekota, who essentially took 273 mummies that were excavated from the German Archaeological Institute. And they did a study. Actually, the study had nothing to do with ethnicity of the mummies. It was published in a journal the Journal of Biotechnique and Histochemistry, had nothing to do with doing a test about ethnicity of the mummies. They were trying to understand the optimal rehydration techniques that were used with the mummies. But in the process, they took essentially samples from different parts, different organs of the mummies, including the skin. And guess what they found when they studied the skin? They arrived at the same conclusion as our brother, Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop. And let me quote from the study. Dr. Mikota says, the basal epithelial cells were packed with melanin as expected for specimens of Negroid origin, dealing with the skin of not 2, not 3, not 20, 273 mummies. But did CNN talk about that? Can someone post in the chat an article by CNN or Fox News or the Washington Post talking about this great discovery that essentially admonished our great Dr. Sheikh Anta Diop, that clearly ends the debate? Because at this point, if the melanin level is black and the genes come from Africa, I'm sorry, buddy, game over. But no, they will ignore these studies. And this is why, as we were saying with Brother Michael earlier, we now have to come together like the brothers in Montgomery. We have to come together in the same way the anti-black Kemet advocates are pushing on TikTok and YouTube this information. We've got to spread that truth, man. We've got the receipts. We've got the actual facts. This debate is over. But still, some will say, because you know they still got some hard-headed people, so we're going to close with this. Some will say, and I promise I'm closing. I promise I'm closing. I got a little, carried away. I think I went over a bit of the time that I had. Even though Brother Michael said, take your time, but I'm trying to respect your time, and I'm trying not to be too long. But this is a heavy subject, brothers and sisters, and it can be difficult to try to compress it. And I don't want to rob you of actual facts that could actually help you. All praises are due to Allah. Thank you. And so some will say, some skeptics will say, well, what about all of the statues showing these light olive skin ancient Egyptians? What about those? Because that's what you see each time they come at us with, well, ancient Egyptians were a very diverse population. And, we had a lot of people who were, ranging from a wide range of colors, from very light skin and, and white and so on. And people like Dr. Hawa is basically talking about, well, these are what the ancient Egyptians always looked like. Well, what about the black ones? Because we have them too. But now the problem is you have similar features, but very different skin tones. So now we have to ask the question, which skin tone was predominantly used by ancient Egyptians to portray themselves? Well, if we go with an emotional response, and this is what we have to stop doing, brothers and sisters, we can't use confirmation bias. Minister Jibril Muhammad taught us much on critical thinking. If you go back to read the articles, I learned critical thinking from Minister Jibril Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, reading his articles. And he insists on the importance of developing a critical thinking mind, meaning you cannot use a confirmation bias. A confirmation bias is when, you're looking at a piece of information that agrees with what you believe. So because it agrees with you, you will essentially endorse it without making sure that you're fact checking it. That's called a confirmation bias. And so when you argue and debate based on confirmation biases, then the minute we say that, hey, look, we have this statue of Pharaoh Narmer. Look, he looked just like Mike Tyson. So Egyptians were black. Look, he looked like Mike Tyson. He looked like Mike Tyson. But then our brothers and sisters, the light-skinned Arab Egyptians, will come back and say, no. You see, look, he has very similar traits with our Egyptian president. You're lying. And so what this becomes is a subjective debate where now I subjectively look at it this way, you subjectively look at it that way. So what, because my background is more in, computer science and mathematics and artificial intelligence. So I deal with statistics a lot and digital data. So I said, look, I can't answer this question just looking at a bunch of, wall paintings and say, well, these are black and these are, and then subjectively assess that. So what I did is I pulled a page from my training, and we ran an experiment, a digital experiment using a mathematical approach to color classification. And, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that if you want to teach Islam, one of the disciplines you need mathematics, medicine, but he also talked about color, and color is a science. And in fact, there is a mathematical framework called the Scilab color framework. That's a sophisticated thing, but really what it says, brothers and sisters, and I don't want to scare you with the math on this, but really what this is it's a mathematical approach to converting essentially the perception of color as it appears in our eyes, but quantifying it so that you're able to have an objective measurement of what is dark, what is light, what is white, what is black, and the spectrum in between, and the spectrum of the colors, the range of colors that essentially the human eye is able to capture. So in material sciences and color sciences, in graphic design and digital imaging, they use this thing called the Scilab model. And so it gives you a score from 0 to 100, with 0 being black. Of course, they're going to put 0 as black, and then 100 being white. So what we did was we essentially took a sample, a statistical sample, 115 wall paintings from ancient Egypt from 40 different excavation sites that are housed in reputable, respected museums, where we know the date, we know the origin, we know the certification, we know the excavation site number, so that we're able to trace the data back. And we used essentially different eras from the Old Kingdom, the New Kingdom, the Middle Kingdom, and the late Ptolemaic Roman period. And so once we had 115, which in statistics is a statistically significant sample size, we then took digital samples of the skin color on the wall paintings. So essentially taking a snapshot of the skin tone. And that gave us a palette of colors for each one of the paintings that we could then convert digitally using programming languages. And so what we did then is we needed an objective criteria for what do we mean by black? What do we mean by brown? Because if Brother Roger, because now if I have what you call a Scilab score and the score is 50, I may say, well, 50 is brown. And you may say, well, 50 is olive. And the others say it's dark brown. So we want an objective criteria of what color score corresponds to what skin tone for which ethnic group. And there is such a standard. It's called the Fitzpatrick Skin Color Scale. And if there's sisters listening, all my sisters that are listening, they use this in cosmetics. So if you go to Sephora, for example, is it Sephora or Sephora? I have 3 daughters, so I take them there sometimes. I don't remember the names. But if you go to a cosmetic store, sisters, and then then you want to buy some powder, right? And what do? They take you to these palettes, and then they look at your skin tone, and then they look at the palette and say, well, you're a a type 3 or you're a type 4. And this is used in dermatology to identify, for example, the risk of contracting skin cancer. So a type 1 and 2 would be what you would identify as typically a white Caucasian, from very white to, palish white. And then a type 3 and type 4 is what you would call, type 3 is more the Mediterranean, light skin, Greek or Spanish, Italian, or some people in Libya or Egypt even. And the olive skin is more, the type 4 is the Mediterranean, whereas the type 5 and 6 is mostly the South Asian Indians, the dark-skinned ones, and definitely Black Africans. So in dermatology, when you say a person is a type 5 or type 6, or even in cosmetics, there's no question that you're dealing with a Black person. So now that's an objective standard where we're not debating over definitions. We have an objective definition and we have a mathematical measurement of color when we convert digitally those samples from what is called the SRBG color codes into the Scilab color code. I'm techno-babbling. I'm going to stop. All right. But I'm just giving you context. And of course, those who may be more trained in science that may want to challenge us, we just want to say we got the receipt. So, we can go if you want to go into the details. But here's what we found. So on the y-axis, you have what is called the L score. So 0 being Black, 100 being white. And then here, these dots are essentially the scores that correspond with the different skin types according to the Fitzpatrick skin tone scale. And then here on the x-axis, you have essentially time. So the Old Kingdom around 3000 BC through the Middle Kingdom, the New Kingdom, and then it jumps into the Roman Ptolemaic period around up to 30 AD. And look at what we found. We found that 89% of all the Old to New Kingdom skin tones portrayed in those wall paintings match the dark skin and deep dark skin of the Black Africans. So in other words, when you measure the color on those paintings, 89% of those paintings came out scoring as type 6 and type 5, which means undeniably Black people. That's what that means. And essentially, all of the late Roman Ptolemaic portraits of the Fayum mummies, they call them, they had a type that corresponds with the olive skin that we find today among the modern light-skinned Arab Egyptians. And what is in between is essentially all the invasions that began the process of race mixing. So when you actually draw what is called a regression line across this axis, you have what is called a very high correlation index. I'm not going to get into what that is, but the confidence interval on that is 99.99999%. Essentially, what that means is that the probability that this is due to chance is 0.0000001%. That's what that means. Okay. So in other words, this skin color that we find in the representations in the books, because it's easy in a book, in a magazine, in a documentary to handpick the statues and the paintings you want to show. Say, well, look, see, ancient Egypt was a very diverse people. But that's not true, because only 11% of all the paintings that we found in that very large sample size from 40 excavation sites, only 11%, including what they call the yellow Egyptian woman thing that I'm not going to get into. It's another topic. But even when you factor that in, only 11% is left. 89% of the time, they represented themselves in that dark hue that you see on the right. And that's an actual fact. And that, when we ran a test statistic, again, we found 99.99999% confidence interval on that. And I'm not going to go into the details of the statistics. But now, really, what all that we've seen, and we're closing now, we're closing for real. But all that we're seeing now, all that we've shown of modern science so far, from genetics to modern digital analytics technology, to demonstrate that ancient Egyptians were in fact Black, that was already said 156 years ago by the father of Egyptology, Jacques-Joseph Champollion Figeac, in 1867. And when you look at the chart that we saw, where you see that the more you go in time, the more light skin, the representation becomes. Well, let's read what, Mr. Champollion has to say. He says, the first tribes that inhabited Egypt, that is the Nile Valley between the Sain Cataracts and the sea, came from Abyssinia to Sennar. By the way, Abyssinia, that's Ethiopia. The ancient Egyptians belonged to a race quite similar to the Kenus and the Barabras, present inhabitants of Nubia. That's Sudan, by the way. In the Copts, and by the way, the Copts, even during his day, the Copts are the modern Arab Egyptians of today. That's who the Copts are. He says in the Copts of Egypt, we do not find any of the characteristic features of the ancient Egyptian population. The Copts are the result of crossbreeding with all the nations that have successively dominated Egypt. It is wrong to seek in them the principal features of the old race. Period. Knockout blow. Dr. Hawass, do you need a towel, sir? Do you need something, sir? Because this debate is over now. And so the father of Egyptology essentially saying 156 years ago everything that science is proving today. And really what Champollion said is only an echo of what the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan taught us about race mixing in Egypt. If you go listen to The Time and What Must Be Done, part 19, you'll see that Champollion is bearing witness to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who says, quote, where are the Black Palestinians? They're pushed out. Where are the Black Arabians? They're pushed out. Where are the real Black Egyptians? Notice that when he talks about the Egyptians, he says the real Egyptians. Where are the real Egyptians? He says they're pushed out. So this race mixing produced a lighter hue, and some maintain their whiteness, but the same nature, the same thought of pushing out or pushing down or suppressing the darker skinned human being. And that, brothers and sisters, in essence, wraps up everything we said in the words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. All that we said was just to bring it all the way back to his words that capture all of it in such a beautiful way. And so, as we close, we got to say it. Michael Jackson, you were right, brother. That video you did, remember the time, you were right, brother. And those of us in the diaspora, brothers and sisters, Black Africa that are in Black America, in Black Brazil, in Haiti, in Jamaica, in Black Canada, don't let anyone tell you that now because we are the tribe of Shabazz that we cannot claim ancient Egypt. We know that to be false. Furthermore, if you read a book by Mustafa Gadala called Exiled Egyptians, the Heart of Africa. Mustafa Gadala is actually an Arab Egyptian born in Cairo, an engineer who turned Egyptologist. And essentially, he did research demonstrating that when the foreign invaders came from Greece and Rome and the Assyrians, as Egypt was being invaded by these northern foreigners, the royal families, the high priesthood, who were the most in danger at the time of being killed by the invaders who were seeking to usurp them, what did they do? Well, according to the research of Mr. Mustafa Gadala, they actually fled to the heart of Africa to seek their brothers and sisters. And so that's why when you go to the Bamileke in Cameroon, you find names like Munkam. And in Creole today, the word Mun means person and Kam means black. In ancient Egypt, that's the name of ancient Egypt, Kemet. So you'll find the Bamileke people carrying names like Munkam. Like my dad from Cameroon, his name is Kamina. There's two Kam. And you find among the Yoruba, among the Dogon, among the people of Benin, all of them have oral traditions that trace back to ancient Egypt, and many of them were the high priesthood and the high royalty of the descendants of pharaohs who fled away, but then during the transatlantic slave trade were captured. So yes, brothers and sisters, you are the descendants of great pharaohs, the direct descendants of great pharaohs, great high priests. Why do you think voodoo is so powerful in Haiti? Because you get that science from your ancient ancestors that built the pyramids. How did the Dogon learn all of the science of the stars that marveled the French anthropologists when they visited them? They did not understand. How could you know all of those astronomical facts? The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said the base of Master Farad Muhammad's teaching is astronomy. Our ancestors studied the stars. And the French anthropologists marveled at these African Dogons that they saw as savages. How do you possess the exact position of Sirius B, which is the twin of Sirius A, the North Star that is invisible to the naked eye? How did they know its exact position and all of its different properties? Not because some aliens came down to tell us, like some would tell us that we didn't build the pyramids, the aliens did it. No, sir. That's because we are actually the conquerors of the stars. In ancient Egypt, it's not the cradle, it's not the beginning of black civilization, so teaches the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. It is the end of great black civilizations because we had even greater ones in the past. And so I leave you with those words of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan that he wrote in a tweet in 2016 in August. He said, "Black people, you were born builders. We were born architects of civilization. Let's be men and women and build a future for our people." So I thank you for your time and attention. If you'd be interested in supporting, you can get a digital copy. That's my cheap plug. You can get a digital copy of my book, Who is the Original Man, Part 1, on Amazon. And with that, I greet you with the greeting words of peace. Assalamu alaikum.
Wow, wow, wow. Wa alaikum salam. Well, dear brother Roger, that was amazing. Absolutely powerful. And what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to our commercial again. We're basically wrapping up this particular broadcast as we speak. We're going to go to a short break, come right back, And if there is any questions that you all have, the audience that I'm speaking to, please raise them within the last minutes that we have left, and our brother will do his best to answer those. But I know you have been fed greatly, so please continue to support such a network that will offer information like this by donating to Closing the Gap broadcast via PayPal. You can send those in to jkingdom1@aol.com, or you can Cash App at $CTG broadcast. You can also mail those donations in from a penny all the way up to CTG broadcast, P.O. Box 531, Ruskin, Florida 33575. And if our brother Romel, if you can do the commercial on the Mas Maryam one, and then we'll do the MGT and GCC commercial as we end out, dear brother. Thank you.
This house is dedicated to knowledge and to the spreading of knowledge. Elijah Muhammad inspired new thought, new mind, new way of civilization among black people. But he wanted a house from which a light could be lifted up to give guidance to all who would be guided as this world begins to close down. This National Center for the re-education and retraining of the black man and woman, but for the totality of the human family of our planet. I named this mosque after the only woman that the Quran names a chapter after, the mother of Jesus, Maryam. All human beings need to be re-educated. That is the purpose of the National Center.
Welcome back as we are concluding such a beautiful and special broadcast with our dear brother student coordinator out of Montreal, Canada, Brother Roger A. Muhammad. I am so honored to have had you on today, dear brother. And I believe this is a discussion that needs to continue. So I'm assuming, or I can foresee, a part 2, a part 3, or maybe a series of discussions on such a topic as such. And if it would be something that could happen, I would hope that the Closing the Gap broadcast network would have the opportunity to display such light and wisdom and knowledge from our dear brother Roger A. Muhammad. And as the scripture says, as light shineth out of the east unto the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. Well, he came. That light came in the name of Allah through a man named Master Fard Muhammad. When he came out of the east, being Allah in person, unto the west, he gave us a teaching that was taught to us by the Christ, the most honorable Elijah Muhammad, whose name means mighty God. And when those two men came together and started this work that we have now, a man was born out of that work named the most honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who is our Messiah. And if you understand, he is also your Messiah. That's right. And when those three men taught us and have been teaching us, this is the kind of product that comes up out of that tree of eternal life. It is truth. And we have been taught recently that we cannot live without truth. So we thank you, dear brother. We have a question or two right here from a Gabriel Lopez and a Mutshi Kapinga. I think I said that correctly. First question is, how to get your books, Brother Roger, from Brother Gabriel Lopez.
Yes, sir. Well, first of all praises due to Allah, and I want to thank you again, Brother Michael.
Praise be to Allah.
You've been a wonderful host from
Praise
D4 and all the way through. And brother, I see such light coming out of you. And I'm not just saying that. I say this in my heart to say it. That I see something in you. I see a purity of heart, and I see a strength in you as that Farrakhan generation, that next Farrakhan generation. So,
Praise
brother,
be to Allah.
continue and hold on, because Allah has greatness stored for you, I believe. So, pardon me, I was just on my heart to say.
Thank you.
You know, yes. So Brother Gabriel is cheating a little bit because he's from Muhammad Study Group of Montreal. So I know you're kind of putting it out there for
me. That's right. Cover it down.
So I'll give you your cut, Brother Gabriel. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't tell him to do that. But no, but you for now, I mean, we had printed copies. The ones that are in print right now are still available in French with one of our brothers in the Muhammad Study Group of Montreal. His name is Brother Gino X, and he has a website called Academy X, and you can find the French one. So if there's anyone who speaks French, you can go to that website. We are going to reprint them soon, but the English one, the last copies were sold actually in New York, and we're in the process of reprinting them. But for now, you can go to Amazon, Canada, or United States, and you can purchase a digital copy. If you just look up Roger A. Muhammad and you type "Who is the original man," it should be fairly easy to find. Oh, I think you're still on mute, my brother.
I am. Thank you, Brother Roger. We have another question, and it's right here. Question: isn't this anti-Kemet mentality a fruit of the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam? That's the question.
Well, I'm not sure if I understand fully the question, but what I will say is that the Abrahamic tradition really ultimately is connected with ancient Egypt. If you remember at the Million Man March, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan talked about the great Pharaoh Akhenaten, who introduced monotheism to the world and restored the worship of the one God in ancient Egypt. And so when you compare the words of Pharaoh Akhenaten in his words of wisdom, and you compare it with some of the Psalms, you will find that there is a parallel between the two. You will find that there is a connection between the two. In the same way Moses gave the children of Israel 10 commandments, really, we're taught as students of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that Musa came out of the original man's land to civilize the caveman. Is that right? And he gave them, now they carry 10 commandments. But if you go back into the original land, you will find in Kemet that we have 42. And the 10 are in the 42. So the original man had this already, but it was repackaged to be adapted for the new people that had to come on this planet. And in adapting it for the new people that came on this planet, stored in it was essentially a package that was meant for a people that people would capture for 400 years. And once we would get the keys to decode that message, then we would find, as Jesus said, the truth, and that truth is setting us free. And that's the truth coming from the teachings of the most honorable Elijah Muhammad and the honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, unlocking those scriptures.
Allahu Akbar. Wow. And there is another one. This is great. And this is a very short question, straight to it. And from Brother Philip X.
Oh, yes,
And I'm
sir.
assuming he's saying or asking, was Nefertiti black or white?
Well, Nefertiti is a bit like Cleopatra in terms of the debate around her ethnicity for different reasons. When it comes to Nefertiti, the problem is that in the excavation sites of ancient Egypt in Armana, where Pharaoh Akhenaten, because Nefertiti is the wife of Akhenaten, essentially there are different records, but we don't have the full details around Nefertiti. So there's a debate. Some say that he married an Asian woman to create a treaty with those people, so she might have been more light-skinned. And some say that she was native, and she represented herself in different ways in different stelae. So I would tend to say that if Jada Pinkett Smith is black, then Nefertiti is black. That's the short answer. But as far as the finer details of it, the archaeologists are debating that one. But as far as we're concerned, again, if Beyonce is black, if Rihanna is black, Nefertiti is black.
I like that. Praise be to Allah. I think that is pretty much it for the questions coming from our audience. I did want to ask you a question. Well, this is not me asking you a question. I usually have a question that I generally ask every interviewee at the very, very end. But before I get to that, I wanted to just say something again. My grandmother just asked a question. I'll ask hers before I go into what I just said. I got to give respect to the audience. She asked a good question because I don't know the answer to this, and it's something you might know the answer to. She did ask, wasn't there more than one Cleopatra?
Yes, there was. There was.
Oh, look at that.
Because really the last Cleopatra that we're dealing with in the documentary is Cleopatra 7. Cleopatra 7. So she's the 7th Cleopatra, in fact. And she's the last when her reign fell. That was the end of the Ptolemaic dynasty. And some Egyptologists will say that was the last Egyptian, that was the last pharaonic dynasty, but that depends on your interpretation. If you if you don't acknowledge the Greek dynasty as original, then we don't agree with that. But yes, there was more than one.
Allahu Akbar. Well, there's something I wanted to say because it might have been 2 interviews ago. I was just, I love looking up at the stars, right? And seeing all those lights that we see in the sky. And because it bears witness to what is below on earth, right on our feet. So I looked up one day and I said, man, at this night sky, and I see all of these twinkles, the starlights. Of course, we know some of them in the sky is not all stars. We know some of them are not all alive stars. And we also know that some of them are planets, right? But it's interesting. The planets in the sky generally shine brighter than the stars. So you can tell a planet because it's one of those big, bright lights in the sky. But planets don't shine light on their own. The light that we see from those planets, though brighter than some of the stars in the sky, their light is being reflected by that beautiful sun that we have in our universe. So I said, wow, look at that. But what makes a star shine is something that our minister has been bringing up the minister, when I say that, I'm referring to the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Right. That's right. There's only
he
one.
says and taught us and been bringing up this fusion, the science of two different things, powers, energies, forces coming together and becoming one powerful force or energy. And this is a science that has been recently discovered. Stars that shine is because they have something that planets don't have, and that's nuclear fusion. Yes. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, I'm going to get to it because it's so beautiful. As I'm watching your presentation, I'm seeing the process by what you were, the journey by which you were taking us on. There was a story from intro to conclusion. And I said, this is like something in our sky. And I'll give way to it right now. Planets, how are they made? They come into contact with a star. There is gas mixed with dust. And you find dust in our scriptures. There's some angels talking, one made out of fire and another one made out of dust, right? But this dust and this gas, it comes in contact with the power and the gravitational energy and pull of a star that is shining bright in the midst of this darkness that we have. And as it comes into the contact of the power of the star, this dust and gas begins to circle or orbit around the star, and it takes up and starts to collect all the matter, whether it's rock or ice or whatever it is in between. It takes it and sweeps it up. And the star, as it circulating this beautiful substance and material around itself, it's becoming something now. It's taking up matter, it's taking up material, and then it becomes a planet made up of the substance that was around this powerful light of a star. So our planet, we know that it had to come from some water. It had to be some rock there, some carbon dioxide, some oxygen, some hydrogen, all within this space of the star. I watched you give us material, and as the journey from intro to conclusion, it was developing. So we say in our teachings, make it plain, right? What you did, because in the word planet is plain. So you made it very plain, and you gave us a light, but that light, that truth could not shine by itself. All the facts that you developed and brought in to a whole could not have any light on its own unless something took it into its orbit and brought it together into a ball of truth that we can look at and say, wow, it's spinning. So I had to say that because now that you brought the truth to us in its whole, a planet has the power to become a star. If there's enough pressure applied to the planet and enough mass and material, the internal pressure will then build, causing something to occur. And now you have a star that was once a planet that needed light to spin is now a light by itself. So the truth that you gave us that is reflecting who you are is now soon to be a truth that will have light circulating in the minds of others all by itself. So I thank you, brother Raja Muhammad, for giving us something of a planet that we can stand on and see, so that we can go to our own homes and go through our own study and say, thank you, Allah, for giving us such light and truth from my dear brother Raja A. Muhammad. So I wanted to say that because I saw it and I said, man, he's making a solar system for us wrapped in truth.
Well, you know, brother Michael, the way you put it, the way you beautifully put it. By the way, brother, You teaching, brother.
Praise be to Allah.
You know, you put it, but the way you put it is beautiful, because what you're describing is what can happen to all of us as little students of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan because what the gravitational center that actually pulls all of this matter in and allows it to hold is the center of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad under the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. As long as we hold that gravitational center, then we can form the planet. And the way you described it, that's right and exact. And it's like, if we submit, if we stay true to the teachings, and we stay true to Islam that's taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, then all of that we're gathering, hold and bring it into that gravitational center. So it's a beautiful explanation, because it's reminding us, that if we remain steadfast as students, ultimately Allah will allow us to manifest Him in submission. So all praise due to
Allah. Now we have fusion with our God. Allahu
Akbar.
Yes, sir. So, dear Brother Roger, this is the question I ask at the end, and I'm going to ask it to you. And it goes like this. If you were in a private setting with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, our Messiah, and the world's Messiah, and there was no security personnel, no one around, just you and him in a private setting where y'all can have a discussion, knowing and being taught and getting ourselves prepared for the departure and journey of our dear minister, what would you love or like to say to him that would give him comfort during his journey, based on the activity of your love while he is gone?
Wow, brother, that's a really deep question. That's a really deep question. And when I was blessed to have an exchange with the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan several times in that short conversation, he talked about the scripture dealing with lifting his name. If you lift his name if his name be lifted from the ground, and when you're with the minister, you're listening, and you're starstruck, literally.
Yes.
Because you're struck by the light of the star that is
teach.
So you're starstruck.
Yes, sir.
And so I was so starstruck. I mean, I didn't ask him, what did he mean? How can we best accomplish that? How can we lift your name? And that the way that scripture goes, it's like you have to lift the name from the earth, from underneath the earth. And what that tells me is that we still have a lot of work to do in really representing the minister to the world. And so I would want to understand, dear Holy Apostle, how can I be a better servant? And how can I be more efficient? How can I lift your name, which the enemy is trying to keep buried in the earth? How can I do that? Because in honest truth, brother, and I'm sure you feel the same, and the believers, most of us feel the same. When you look at all that the minister has done, we feel that we're so far behind. The gap that we have to close is so wide. So I feel, because I feel inadequate, because I feel like I'm not doing all that needs to be done, I would want to understand. I would want to know, how can I be a better servant in helping him? How can I be a better helper to him? Because he gave us life. He gave us everything. We would have nothing to say today if it were not for this man and how he stood up after listening to this man who was sent as an angel to him, Minister Jabril Muhammad. So the only thing I would want to know is how I can be a better help to him, because if I can't be a better help to him who gave me life, what is my life? So that's all I want to know, Brother Michael, is how can I help him better? Because I feel like the gap is still too wide between us and the minister. And all I want is to close the gap. That's why we're here. Close the gap.
Allahu Akbar. Well, I'm not worthy to answer for him, but I would just give my own saying to what you just said. You have went into the history that was hidden from us by our open enemy. You went down into the earth and pulled up the truth about something that the art deceiver hid. He's so masterful, but it just took Brother Roger Muhammad, to have enough love based on the greater light spinning him to go into the earth and pull up the truth. And if you can pull up the truth that the Satan has hid, the only one with light outside of the God himself, but he uses it for wickedness. He was Lucifer with all light coming from God. So this is a powerful being. So when he hides something, he hides it really good. But our brother Roger went in and pulled it up. So if you can do that over what Satan has hid, then they can't hide the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan with a man like you still on the scene.
All praises due to Allah.
So when he's gone, his name can never go into the earth and be hidden, because there is one like you that has the mastery and the love attached to the mastery and skill to go in and uncover things. But they say in China, prevention is better than cure. So as long as you're here, they'll never have the ability to put it into hiding, because you'll be always present preventing it.
Brother, that's what we live for, brother. That's what we live for. We are fighting for this truth, brother. That's what we're here for.
We will surely win.
We will surely win with our Savior Allah, the universal King.
Come on, Brother Roger. Allahu Akbar. Dear family, we thank you for tuning in. We are at our end. We thank you so much for coming in early with us, an hour early at 6 p.m. and even staying on a half an hour later at 8:30 with us. That just goes to show you that we are coming together, especially when they have permanently deleted our first channel with 5,000 subscribers, and you're still showing up on this new channel, but just be patient. We know that the separation has come, so we ain't so desirous of trying to fight our way back in. We're just now desirous to try to focus on how to stay right where we are doing this for ourselves. So I know Minister James is working on something beautiful in such way, because he's a warrior that comes from God. So they can't stop this. Allahu Akbar. And dear brother, we thank you. If you have anything you want to say as a closing remark to the people, you can do so right now. And then Brother Romel will close us out and end us with our commercial.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you all, Michael. Thank you. Thank the audience. And most of all, thank the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, on whose shoulders we stand as we strive as little helpers to be a representation to him. So let's continue on, and please, Closing the Gap, continue on. And it would be my honor and my privilege. It would be a distinct honor to come back anytime you want. I'm here with you, brother. I feel at home, brother. We never met in person, but when we connected, I just feel the brotherhood with you all the way up in the north. So all praises due to Allah for the Closing the Gap Broadcast Network.
lost in the loop.